Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about Legacy of Phrecia and kind of what I've experienced in this whole little league. I mean, they called it league in-game, but they said it was kind of an event. We're going to talk about idols, we're going to talk about Ascendancies, what could maybe be implemented, will it be implemented, maybe a little bit of a connection to Period 2. Now, quickly for people who did not play Phrecia, it was basically meant as an event, although it is way more unique content than any event ever combined, basically. It is like a league, and it is also called a league if you look in game. So I would qualify it as a league. And basically what you had is you had the Atlas passive tree removed and idols added. Idols are these itemized sort of effects, random effects that you would usually find on the Atlas passive tree, but you can way better mix and match, meaning you can specialize and have the same effect multiple times, which you would usually just pick once on the Atlas passive tree, which makes for some absolutely ridiculous farming strats and just, in general, a lot of fun. There were a lot of shadow sides to it, but that's kind of how it was. We're going to talk about all the details in a bit. And then there were also 19 new Ascendancies, which ranged from unusable to batshit crazy to OP to normal, all the range. But most of them were very, very wacky and don't really fit into the main game. But that is the point. Like, you play them once, you have very specific things that you do with them. They were all a lot more specialized than the ones in the base game. We're going to go through that as well. But in general, I enjoyed it. So I played two builds that could not have been more different. I played a Whisperer with Kinetic Blast of Clustering, one of the best clear speed monsters out there right now. And then I played Molten Strike of the Zenith on Ancestral Commander, which is basically your typical Rogue Exile tier 17 farmer that, I don't know, just cares a lot about max hit, cares a lot about damage, not so much about clear speed. So yeah, tasted the full spectrum. Same with farming strats. I've started off with Breach, Legion, Rogues for a little bit, but mostly tier 17s. I just enjoyed personally a little bit more with 200% map effect. I basically did it all. Also some more niche strats like Blueprints, but overall I got a pretty good taste. And I gotta say, Phrecia is personally in my top 5 all time. If we can call it a league, I don't know what else to say. Phrecia is just very efficient. It is a lot of content at once, and although a lot of the content is super wacky, and I can see why they didn't want to implement all these things in the base game, I can still say they were a lot of fun. And one thing that this league taught me is that it's not always just about quality of the new stuff, it's also about just getting new stuff to kind of figure out. Even if they go away, that's fine. Kind of like Harvest Crafting back in the day, right? We got to enjoy it for like 1 or 2 leagues, and then it's gonzo, it gets gutted. That is usually fine with me. I just need these content drops, and I just enjoy figuring stuff out. Now, there's really 3 things I want to talk about it. Idols, the Ascendancies, and then kind of moving forward, what we can learn from this. Could this be implemented? Maybe Period 2 implications and whatnot. But I want to start off with idols because they have been changing the game the most during Phrecia. Now, idols are incredibly controversial, and I'll show you in a second why, and I think I have a pretty good grasp now after talking to a lot of people in like different situations, more casual, extremely sweaty, like everything in between. And I want to kind of talk about them also from my perspective. Biggest change this league, we didn't have an Atlas passive tree. And I gotta say, I realized I don't really care. Like, I did not miss it for a second. A lot of people said that they missed it on day 1 because of the shitty map sustain. But that's more of like a balancing thing, right? And like enabling certain modifiers on idols that get you a smoother transition. But I don't want to do the same Atlas passive tree, starter tree for the, I don't know, 10th time or whatever. I really did not miss it. And I actually kind of liked what idols brought to the table. Obviously, early on, it was really annoying just getting Einhar in every map, getting Alva in every map, June in every map, and just dying, right? Of course, it is annoying. But that's just something you have to figure out, and a lot of us were pretty clumsy with that, especially early on, because it's a new mechanic. But I did not miss the Atlas passive tree for a second, and that's not something I would have thought. And I wonder if that is because it has been in the game for so long, or because it's just not that important. I'm not really sure. But I've talked to a lot of people who didn't really miss it, so who knows? However, there's a lot of other stuff to be said about idols. I love that you're actually able to specialize in a strat. I'll take Essences as an example. So an Essence strat in Period 1 right now, without idols, goes like this. You get 34 points and you have it completely filled out. And then what you do is you take literally nodes like this, right? Like Quant, Rarity. I mean, it doesn't really matter in Essences, but the point is you don't really have anywhere to go. Same kind of goes for beasts and a few other things. But regardless of what you do, you fill out your clusters and you're kind of done. And whatever you can do revolves around what the notables actually give you and what GGG allows to give you. Now, you could say it's the same thing with idols because they obviously determine what kind of modifiers you can get on them. However, the amount of effects you can stack here of one singular powerful effect is ridiculous. I mean, just look at all these modifiers you can choose from, and if they are on 1x2s or 1x1s, you can stack them as often as you want. Now, some of them don't really go over 100%, sure, but the world is basically your oyster, and you can also mix and match them with scarabs, depending on what you want to do. There's a lot of super intriguing stuff here, even on 1x1s, that you can stack like 20 times and you get, I don't know, 10 times the effect that you would get from an Atlas tree. So what I'm trying to say is, I really love actually being able to specialize in a strat. If you are farming essences, 100 points are wasted with garbage, nonsense, right? Even if you're farming something like legions or something like abyss or beast, half of your points will just go into some like bullshit. Like, you cannot focus on just one thing anymore. Or you can, and half of your points go to waste, or we have the meta where everybody just takes explicit map modifier effect, which is a problem with idols right now, sure, but that can be also circumvented by just maybe like not making it as accessible. But like, it's just kind of silly, right? Obviously. So I love being able to actually specialize in a strat and go all in. Like, instead of getting a little bit of blueprints, a little bit of that, I was literally pulling out, I don't know, a quad tap full of fully revealed blueprints in like a day. That is ridiculous, right? You can also do way more stuff like XP farming. Like, you get abyss monsters get 40% increased XP. I have this setup right here that just levels me up to 100 way quicker. I did not touch a single 5-way this league. Absolutely love that about idols. It is also more exciting, just kind of, I love itemized stuff. I love having everything itemized, being able to customize. I know it puts a lot of pressure and it's a lot of like, obviously, currency that you have to spend on them, but I just love being able to have stuff that's like uniquely mine instead of just filling in points personally, but that might just be because it's new, so maybe that's just a novelty thing. I also think it makes ground loot more exciting, although there is a big asterisk here, because while it is exciting to pick them up and find some of these 5 divine or 10 divine idols, which you will, if you know what you're doing, you can also gamble for them. The stash tab situation is just like, it is ridiculous. I have like 30 or 40 quad taps, always have had. What can I say? Whale. But it is ridiculous. Like, there's zero chance I'm picking up any of these after like day 4, day 5, mostly Conqueror idols. So that is just ridiculous. So it is obviously an issue. What I'm trying to say is there's actually stuff on the ground other than currency that you're hyped for. I even had Conqueror idols as tinks, right? Like similar to a divine orb. So I'm getting really hyped about a Conqueror idol whenever I see it. And gambling for them was really fun. So that is something that was kind of missing in the game before anyways. It makes the Atlas progression less obvious. This is something I already kind of touched on, but like the same starting Atlas every single league, it is completely frictionless. Like, it is the easiest completion of the Atlas we've ever had in the last, I don't know, whenever Atlas came out like 8-9 years ago. It's a joke. It's like, it doesn't even exist. There's no friction in the first few days of the league anymore, I almost feel like. And although it was a little bit annoying, I had to buy a lot of maps this league, it took a little longer and I did not personally mind. So yeah, that's maybe like just me. And then you have a lot of currency sync for juicers. Now, you could argue, well, juicers always have a currency sync because of their gear, but being able to kind of like decide between wanting to invest in your farming strat permanently versus investing into your character strength and being able to farm bigger maps is an interesting decision to make. In fact, one thing I actually did is I farmed legions and I realized my character was at a point around about 10 divines where I could perfectly farm them. So I put my next 50 divines all into idols and I just snowballed from there. That is basically how it went. And it was a very interesting dynamic. I was running around with absurdly bad gear for a while, but I still made so much currency. And that is because it is permanent. It's not like scarabs. It's not like, oh, I have to, I don't know, put in 4 every single, I don't know, every single map. And then, ooh, Somebody comes up with a crazy strat. So now Horned Scarab of Nemesis is so expensive that I can't run it into my strat anymore. Oh, okay. Well, I guess the strat is dead because I'm not going to pay 50C per map. Oh, but that doesn't happen because idols you buy once and then they give you back the returns permanently. It's not a per map basis. So while yes, it is a pretty high investment, especially if you go for certain things that are meta. For example, this one right here is something you're gonna pay an absolute crap ton of currency, but once you have it, and you can also resell it later. So for me personally, it was a great experience. Would I want to have this all the time? I don't know. Maybe it was just a novelty, but honestly, overall, I enjoyed it more than the Atlas passive trade. However, and now we go into the downsides, is I don't think they can ever be implemented in PoE 1. Ever. They cannot be main game. As much as I love them, I'm not like delusional to that kind of point. And that is because of trade. Now there's an interesting trend with everybody I asked who hates idols. And it goes always down to trade, which I personally find very annoying because this kind of reminds me of Necropolis. I really dislike Necropolis, but in hindsight, I'm thinking if the trading experience was better, maybe I would actually have liked it. And I think this could be the same for a lot of people with idols. Trading for these and then having to recombine like 50 times, it is incredibly annoying. And I felt it even in week 1, week 2, when I wanted to make my stuff. Now, obviously, there's also this thing where nobody knew what anything's worth in the first week, second week. So people repriced all the time because they were like, they had FOMO, and that added to the trading experience. But in no way, shape, or form, with the current PoE 1 trading experience, could you ever implement this into the game. The current trading in PoE 1 is just garbage. If you want to implement this, you would have to make instant buyout. And that's just not the case right now. Scarabs are fine because they're stackable, but everything that has to do with rares, this is also something going forward with leagues that I'm very disappointed at. It's that we will never have anything like this as long as trade is not sorted out. Like, never. It cannot happen. It is impossible. And even I feel it, even though I'm an absolute idol shill. I gotta tell you right now, I feel this as well, and it is something that is worse for everybody else, obviously. So I think as long as that's not figured out, idols have absolutely no chance. Stash clutter is the next one I already talked about. The stash situation is ridiculous. Oh, just 3-to-1 them. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna sit there for an hour, 3-to-1ing every. Yeah, sure. Now, obviously, if these dropped identified, like for example in Last Epoch, certain things do, or a lot of things do, and you could filter them, that would solve the issue. But we've had that discussion for a while now, and it has never happened. So I'm not going to hold my breath there. And the third one is real. Rich get richer, and this is something I've talked to a lot of people that started late. The problem is just that idols are so snowbally. Like, you start at 1 to 2 div an hour, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, and now at some point I got into 30, 40, 50 per hour. It's like it never stops. If you just keep reinvesting into your idols, it just never stops. And people just buy them up, destroy them with recombining, and there's such a market for them. And if somebody starts out, sure, there's a few niche strats, like it also is the case in PoE 1, right? You can always farm essences in white maps. You can farm beasts in white essences, make good money. But if you want to do the juicy strats, like, good luck getting multiple mirrors for some of these tier 17 strats. And sure, at the start, everybody thought it was just Rogue Exile. No, no, no. Now that everybody has min-maxed and we have a lot more refined idol setups, a lot of these strats are like 1 mirror plus. So for a new player coming in, or even like a week ago, it is literally impossible to catch up and to get to this point and get the snowball rolling. It takes so goddamn long. So while it's really nice to have this niche for juicers or for people who play multiple weeks to have another avenue to invest their currency, there's the other side that is a pretty big downside for the community as a whole, I think. Now, do I think these could be implemented? I actually think they could, but with a few caveats. The first one is there needs to be instant buyout in the game. So already you can shut off because that's never going to happen. But anything better than we have right now or up to instant, and they would literally have to drop identified so we could filter them out, because at some point it is ridiculous how many drop. And nobody has that many quad taps to keep track, and nobody's gonna hover over all of them, gonna 3-to-1 them. No, that's insane. It is absolutely insane. So I think they would have to actually drop identified so we can keep these hype moments when you drop like a 5 divine conquer idol, 10 divine magic conquer idol or something. It is awesome. But yeah, this will have to be required in my opinion. And then I have like 2 ideas. The first idea is to have a smaller Atlas passive tree plus idols. Now, the reason this smaller Atlas passive tree is actually really nice is because it kind of grounds the farming strats, right? Like it gives you a baseline. Like baseline, without any idols, you're not gonna make like, I don't know, 50 C an hour. You're actually gonna make like 2, 3, 4 divine. So you have like a ceiling for how snowball your idols are, and then you would probably have to adjust how many idol slots there are. Currently there are 32, maybe you make 24 or something, but you have kind of like a mixture of them, and I think this could be quite hype. You could keep the hype drops, you could keep the investing for juicers, but you would tone it down a little bit in favor for players who are more casual. The other idea I had was actually keep idols, keep Atlas tree, but remove scarabs and a lot of these consumables that we usually use, because I really hate being priced out of certain strats because one scarab is used by another strat that uses it better. It's just annoying. However, I don't think it's possible because you need stuff to get consumed to keep on the economy. So I don't think it really holds water. But the third thing, or like the second idea that might hold water, is use them in Period 2. And I really mean this because Period 2's biggest problem right now, for me anyways, is endgame. I hate everything about Period 2's endgame right now. I know they're trying to pinpoint where the problem lies. For me, the problem is everything here. I don't like how it looks. I don't like how it feels. I don't like really anything about current Period 2 endgame. I would love for them to absolutely tear it down and start from scratch. And while I don't think that's going to happen or that's realistic, idols would throw in an absolute wrench into this endgame. It would make it more chaotic. It would make it more exciting. And that is what they kind of need. And I think that's where they want to get to eventually. They want a lot of things to happen here, right? But that's just not where we are right now. So I think idols could be a really good baseline. Another reason why I actually say this is that PoE 1 already has the Atlas passive tree, has a lot of very niche stuff like scarabs. So adding on top of it would be too much. But PoE 2 has like nothing. Like there's like these mini Atlas passive trees, and then there's this. Like there's so much room, so much wiggle room. Obviously, you would completely change what the effects are and whatnot, and you would introduce new idols over time whenever new expansions or new patches come out with the, I don't know, like right now we have basically Breach, Simu, Ritual, and all those things, but whenever new things get introduced, you can add more idols, and at some point you have a, I don't know, solid endgame? Not sure, but in general, I feel like idols could do way more for Period 2 than for Period 1. Now, let's talk about Ascendancies. Build-wise, I feel like Legacy of Phrecia really picked the worst timing possible. I haven't really seen a meta so dominated by probably like 2 skills. I know that Molten Strike of Zenith is not very meta, but in terms of tier 17 and tier 16 Rogue Exile farming, it's just really hard to beat it and Lightning Strike. That I don't really know if this was a good time, because there's a lot of builds I would have thought about maybe a few patches ago that were possible on these that are now just completely outclassed, and you could just do a very narrow amount of content with it. So there were a few highlights here, but overall, I feel like this was a shakeup in a time where you don't beat Lightning Strike. So a little bit awkward. It was kind of like, oh, what ascendancies fit the best for the best skills, rather than, oh, this ascendancy elevates that skill. And that's not completely true, right? We definitely had a big rise in attack-based mana builds with Whispera. We had Herald of Agony, right? So there was definitely things to explore, but not as many because they were kind of held down by some of the OP skills right now. Now, Dreamcore made a video a couple of days ago, which was quite interesting to see because it shocked me a little. He basically talked about how he would like to keep the Ascendancies in the game, not just as like side content, but have it in the base game. And I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I vehemently disagree. I usually like agree a lot with his takes. That's why I say shocked. Not that it's like outrageous. I've seen this all over the place. I know a lot of you guys want the Ascendancies to stay in the game. Like what, 38 Ascendancies? It's like there were a lot of other ideas, like for example, pick one of each class and have like a 4th Ascendancy for each. I'll kind of make my case for why I don't think these need to be in the core game. First, and this is something you'll know if you've kind of followed before the league started, apparently what happened is Jonathan had his video, then there was kind of a fallout, and they scraped together this league basically. So while a lot of people think that these are all Ascendancies that were there at some point and were kind of drafted and excluded, from what I've heard, a lot of these were literally just thrown together, which is something you can see if you see that some of these nodes literally just do stuff that uniques in the game do. Some of them make very little sense with how they're like thrown together. Abyss Jewels, Blind, projectiles, random, like in general, a lot of these are very unfocused or too focused. If you think about the Ascendancies that are currently in the game, they're way more streamlined. They're like kind of perfected over time, and they all just add to the class fantasy in some kind of way as well, not just talking build-wise, right? They have a theme, and depending on power level, obviously, they're going to go up and down. Some are kind of whack, but once they're good, all of a sudden they're not whack anymore, right? Like, what I'm trying to say here is I have this feeling that a lot of people just want some of these in the base game because they're OP. Scavenger would be one of these examples. I actually like the idea of it, but I think the power level is like all over the place. And while it's neat to think, oh, I just want OP stuff, let's get Ancestral Commander instead of Juggernaut or something, it has big implications for the balance of the game. So for me, the new Ascendancies are just way too unfocused, way too whack. Like, I mean, this is literally just a few ring Ascendancies thrown together, some movement speed so people are happy and think it's like great to have in the base game or whatever. And then you have like fishing rod stuff. I know it's goofy and all, but they have to think about this in the long term. I think it is actually perfect content for something that you only have for one league. It's something that you throw in and everybody's like, whoa. But balancing these, like, why add them? We already have so many choices to make in PoE 1 that I don't know why we need more. I want to talk about a few things and takeaways you can have from these Ascendancies. For example, why is there no attack-based mana Ascendancy, right? And stuff like that. But as a whole, I think the Ascendancies are just completely whack. And that doesn't mean that I didn't like them. I wholeheartedly enjoying them and seeing what people did with it. And the ones I did play, which is Whisper and Ancestral Commander, I absolutely loved. And it did open up a lot of new things. But do you think that I want these in the base game? Hell no. However, there are 3 things I did like. The first one is Bog Witch. Bog Witch made me realize how there is a deep need for dot-based Ascendancy. And I don't just mean Chaos Dot. I mean Dot. It is kind of wild that we have, I mean, sure, we have like Bleed and stuff. We have a little bit of poison themes and whatnot. But like a Dot Ascendancy is such a big part of the game. Like Cold Dot, Chaos Dot. They always have to like find some weird niche. Why is there not something like Pandemic in the main game, right? Like, why is there not something like, obviously these would have to be streamlined and changed, but honestly, I could see one of the current Witch Ascendancies be a lot more dot focused, and that would, for example, for me, be straight up Occultist. If you look at current Occultist, there's not that much here. It's kind of like Chaos Cold based already, and it's supposed to be that dot base, right? It is not a coincidence that there's Chaos and there's Cold Dot that kind of have no other home, and these also work very well with Cold, right? But then you have this weird like Forbidden Power here, I guess as a Forbidden Flesh, Forbidden Flame for some builds, a Vile Bastion. These have been so toned down to a point where they're completely like just unplayable. Unholy Authority, like, I don't know. Like, I think this Ascendancy could definitely have a little bit of an overlap with Bog Witch. Now, another thing that Whisper made me realize, not necessarily how strong it is, because it is ridiculous. You could not implement something like Infinite Pursuit into the main game, but having nothing attack-based for mana stackers is really odd, simply because of how they've implemented stuff like Kinetic Blast of Clustering, Power 7 of the Archmage, Mana Forge Arrows. When it comes to spell-based builds, I mean, you have Hierophant, but honestly, how much mana support is there for spells right now? It's mostly all done through Archmage, if you think about it. So skill-wise, there's like, what, Mana Bond? So there's also no Mana Leech on spells, so I don't know, if there's a half an Ascendancy dedicated to spell-casting attack-based builds, then why is there nothing for attack-based builds when they have like 3 very, very powerful, very niche things, right? So what I would propose, for example, as one of the changes would be remove Focal Point, remove Avidity, maybe even Occupying Force, and make a little bit of a mana theme right here. Mainly because Avidity hasn't really like caught on after they reworked Deadeye, and I like the approach, but I feel like this could very easily fit into Deadeye. And the third thing is I could maybe see a 20th Ascendancy, as dumb as it sounds, just so we can have the number 20 instead of 19. And Scion maybe has a little bit more interesting choices. And the reason I say this is I really like the idea of a Scion that kind of rotates uniques, which, once again, that would be a lot of work, but not as much work as adding 19 new Ascendancies, right? But it would be quite interesting. Like this league, we have, I don't know, Cloak of Flame, which is OP. Next league, you have this. Next league, you have that. I don't know if it could work, but if we talk like porting one Ascendancy for sure, then that would be my pick. Oh, another thing that Ancestral Commander made me realize is how teethless Juggernaut is nowadays. Like, it is an absolute shell of its former self. Like, it is crazy with, I mean, it's still played, obviously. There's things that don't have a home other than Juggernaut, but playing Ancestral Commander, it is basically just what you want from a Juggernaut, but way, way, way turned up. Now, I don't know if this is just because I love this Ascendancy because it's so OP, but yeah. I would maybe think about picking a few notes here and put it on Jug. That's maybe the last one. So yeah, once again, these are the 3 ideas. Bog Witch, Occultist Hybrid, Deadeye, or Warden. Maybe have like a little bit of a mana theme, a touch from Whisperer in there, and then make Juggernaut a little bit more interesting. Did I just write Juggernaut? I did. Wow, that's the new Ascendancy name. Either way, that would be a cool crossover as well. But in total, I super enjoyed this league, and I don't know if it is because we didn't have any new content for so goddamn long, or is it actually that I enjoyed it, or it doesn't matter, whatever, placebo. It is a top 5 league for me personally. In terms of idols and new Ascendancies, which are basically the new content, I would love to see idols make a comeback in any form, in any shape, maybe to like make PoE2 a little bit more chaotic, make it a little bit more exciting endgame. If they have to use it in PoE2, then use it in PoE2. Maybe PoE1 has too much of an established thing there. I personally did not miss the Atlas tree once again. I was very surprised by how much people hated idols. I think it's mostly the trade that's the issue. But since that will never change, it's kind of the same point, right? We know trade is never going to be instant buyout. So probably stuff like idols can just never truly be implemented. It is what it is. However, if I want them to take away one thing from the trading debacle with idols, everybody loves it, but everybody also hates it because of trading. You don't want to change trading. Don't give us stuff like Necropolis or this in the future, because it just doesn't work out, right? It's just annoying, maybe for a little bit, but Necropolis was an absolute, I mean, at least for me, a shit show. So know your weaknesses, and stackables are fine, right? Like All Flames, those are all fine. But if you want to shoehorn yourself into that with a bad trade system, then that is kind of the outcome, right? It is what it is. And then also, talking about Ascendancies, I definitely do not want them to go main. That would be way too much bloat and is completely out there for me. But they can take some hints. Like I said, for example, there should probably be a more dot focus class like Bog Witch. There should be a Bog Shaman. Did I say Bog Witch for the whole video? Oh god. And then stuff like maybe a mana based attack based thing, right? Like it would make sense. There's a lot of mana based attacks nowadays. Not just Mana Forged Arrow, Kinetic Blast of Clustering. Maybe it would make more sense up here in the Wand region. I don't know, whatever. Combine it with Deadeye, maybe a little bit of Warden. Those are all cool. Maybe make Juggernaut have a little bit more teeth. Maybe then we didn't need Ancestral Commander even, right? Either way, I think there's a few things to learn from them, but in general, I find them very unfocused, unfinished, which is what they were for. I don't think they would ever fit into the base game. But yeah, with that said, PoE1 donezo. We have PoE2 around the corner. 0.2 is coming out in 1.5 weeks from whenever this comes out, I think. Yep, 1.5 weeks. So I'm very excited for that, and we're going to see what they bring to the table. Probably no idols, but it is what it is. And yeah, hope you enjoyed Phrecia as well. It was a good ride, and since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.